Welcome, everyone, to Christian Fiction Fans. We are here with Jamie Ogle tonight to discuss her book of Love and Treason. We're going to try and keep it spoiler free. Let me introduce Jamie to you first. Jamie Ogle is a homeschool mom by day and a reader by night. Inspired by her fascination with the storied history of faith, she writes historical fiction infused with hope, adventure, and courageous rebels. A Minnesota native, she now lives in Iowa with her husband and their three children, and she can usually be found gardening, beekeeping, and tromping through the woods. So welcome, Jamie. We're so glad you're here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you all.
Yes. Well, why don't you start by just telling us what is kind of your journey to becoming an author? Is this something you always wanted to do or you happened upon it?
Like story has always been like a part of my life and a part of my growing up. Um, my parents read missionary biographies to us every night for as long as I can remember as a kid. And then, my grandparents would come down and they would just tell stories and stories and stories about their lives. And so I was just kind of surrounded by that. But I never thought I would be a writer. I just thought stories were just something people told. Like that's just what we all do, right? And then I really wanted to be a missionary because I loved when the missionaries would come to our church. They would take over the whole sermon and just stand up there and tell these amazing stories about what God was doing in the world and what God was doing in the parts of the world that they were in. And they had these amazing stories just about what God was doing and these miracles. And it was so inspiring. And I was like, oh man, I want to do that. I want to be a missionary. And so all growing up, all through high school, like I had these plans. I was gonna teach English as a, second language. I was gonna move to India. I was gonna marry an Irish doctor. Like I had my whole life planned, right? Um, and God kind of redirected me in college, and which was kind of confusing for me because I was a little bit like, well, wait a second, like, isn't being a missionary like the best thing you can be? Like, why would you tell me no, God? So I was kind of cast around a little bit for like what I should do now. Um, and just kind of fell into writing more because it was something I loved and what something that I could see myself doing. I didn't know how to do it professionally, but it just kind of happened. I changed my major to English literature, creative writing, and I felt an instant peace that this is where I was supposed to be and this is what I was supposed to do. So yeah, been pursuing that ever since, which is kind of a long time, but
It takes a
um,
long time to write a book and become an author. So
it
when you
does.
landed upon that major in college, were you like, okay, I'm going to be an author, or were you still kind of like English, but maybe something related?
I thought maybe I would like be a professor someday or something, but
Yeah.
always you wanted to write. And my husband, we married in, well, I was still in college, and he's like, if you want to be a writer, you should be a writer. Just like do it, like pursue this career and just go for it. So he was the one who really pushed me from the beginning to like, if you love this, then you should pursue it and do it. So um, that was pretty amazing to have him kind of behind
Yeah,
me, cheering me on and pushing me towards
absolutely.
something I loved. So
So did you start writing like when you're in college, right out of college, or did you put a pause on it because of married and family life?
it was sort of I started writing in college, and then yeah, we started having kids, and that kind of put a pause on it a little bit. But that's when I kind of fell in love with reading to read,
Hmm.
because when you're an English major in college, you're like reading all these things you don't actually want to read or enjoy or
Right.
enjoy reading. So it was like kind of drudgery a little bit. Um, so yeah, just having babies, being up all night with babies, I just started reading novels again and was like, oh, this
Mm,
is this is what I love. And I started writing again, after I mean, I was writing a little bit with all of them, but not like this is going to be a real thing. But when I
Hmm.
was pregnant with our third, it was when I was like, okay, I have this book idea. I'm going to finish it on my due date. Like that's my that's my deadline. See if I can do this. And yeah, so that's when I wrote of Love and Treason.
Okay.
Kind of around those times. So
And so tell us the process of Love and Treason. How long did it take you to write that very first draft? And then what was the process to get it published?
yeah, so I think I'd started that book. It was probably like a 6 year process from when I had
Hmm.
first started scribbling down ideas to when, my third baby was born and I was like, I gotta, I gotta actually finish it this time. So it was about 6 years. And then 2 months after he was born, I went to my first writers conference, thought I had just this amazing story. And I pitched it to the agent and I was like, yeah, I have a book and it's good. And I could not remember anything else. Didn't even remember, like, it's about Saint Valentine. I don't know, that could have been something, but I couldn't even remember his name. So she did not sign me. So but she did give me a lot of good feedback on things I could do, things I could improve, like what steps I needed to take, join ACFW, different things like that. So I kind of just took all of her feedback and dove in and kind of just did everything she told me to do. So I was just eager to learn and kind of figure out this whole thing. So from there, it was about 2 years of querying and editing, and every time I learned something, like going through my whole manuscript and fixing it all. And yeah.
Wow, that was amazing. So, a lot of authors have told us that they wrote books before the debut book. Do you have any of those secret books in a drawer or a file somewhere?
Yeah, I have some completed books and then a lot of partial books that I started and then never finished. So
Yeah.
they probably are going to stay that way for sure.
That's what a lot of people say.
But
So, talk to us a little bit about what inspired of Love and Treason. We know it's about the true story of Saint Valentine, but how did you get to that place? Was it always a dream of yours to write about early Rome, or how did you decide to write this book?
it was never really a dream of mine to write about ancient Rome. I minored in ancient history because I just thought it was interesting, but I never thought I was going to use it for any sort of writing. I just thought it was cool. I wanted to write early American like Laura France does. I love her book so much.
Mm.
And so that was I have, manuscripts like that, but not ancient Rome. And so when I don't know. So I was being kind of sour about Valentine's Day one year and was trying to make this case to my husband that we shouldn't celebrate anymore. So I was like, I got to research, what this is even about. So I just kind of started digging into the story and was just swept away by the story of this man and the courage and the faith and the miracles and all these things. And it was like, why have I never heard this before? And where's the novel and where's the movie? And could not find anything on it. So besides like some kids' books or just little
Yeah.
portions inside of other books. But um, I don't know, the story just kind of took residence in my head and started scribbling out random scenes. And pretty soon pretty soon, 6 years later, I had a really big story that was.
Yeah, it is a big story. So, one of the things that fascinated me about this story was the detail that you put in for just the way of life in Rome at this time. And I imagine there's not a lot of information. I may be wrong. Like, how do you find out things like the kind of food they ate, or even the way you described the bakery and their proofing process of how they put the bread through the thing? Like, how did you find all this out? Or the other thing was the medical stuff there. That was just fascinating. Is there stuff
The
written about all
hair,
this, or
the hair in the food, the
the hair
hair
in
in
the
the
food?
food. Oh my
Inspired
gosh.
by true events.
Sorry.
No, yeah, so there are cookbooks, ancient Roman cookbooks,
Okay.
that are written full of recipes, and so I dug into those, and there are oh, I can't remember. Oh, medical journals, like medical books of these physicians and all of their findings and their how to cure these different things. So a lot of that is taken just directly from those sources of ancient texts. The bread proofing process, I did make that up. That's
Okay.
fiction. So, but they did have bakeries. Um, they did have bakers. They did have different kinds of bread and restaurants and all these things. And the whole like the shopping mall was all
Humories.
real. Yep.
Yeah, that was also fascinating was the perfumery and all the
Yeah.
different scents and stuff that I was like, oh my goodness. But, at a time before deodorant, I guess that was probably kind of important to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
that.
You would probably need that.
Yeah.
Although they did have the public bathhouses. I mean, it's the more you dig into it, the more you're like, okay, this isn't as like rustic as you imagine
Hmm.
it to be.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool to see it just felt really relevant. The more I dug in, the more I was like, oh, we still have that, or we do that, or, it was kind of fun to research.
Yeah. The other thing that was fascinating to me was how you named all these characters, because as an author myself and other authors I talk to, naming characters is really hard. But now you've got to come up with names that we don't roll off our tongue normally. So was that a lot of research that went into that as well?
So yeah, like I mean, there a lot of the characters in the book are real people. So I didn't have to stretch too far. So I mean,
Good.
Valentine's real. Um, Iris, we don't really know the name of the jailer's daughter. And then her father is Quintus, right?
Hmm.
Um, his name changed because I discovered like that was really the jailer's name.
Okay.
So Marius and Martha, they were real. Their sons, Abacum and Artifacts, were real. Cato, I made up because I needed to have him. But yeah, so a lot of them were real, and I was just kind of filling in, like, all right, give me some Latin names, what sort of maybe would be a
Yeah,
little easier to pronounce than a lot of these real ones that are kind of weird, but.
right. Um, and Titus, is that a real person?
No, not historically.
Okay.
Somebody arrested Valentine. We just don't know who did it. But so he was actually a later addition. I had written several drafts without him,
Okay.
and the draft with him is a very minor character.
Hmm.
And actually my husband's idea to give him a whole point of view. So
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great point of view. And I've started reading As Sure as the Sea and started seeing some of those characters popping back up. And all of a sudden it hit me, wait, Titus, is this like the book of Titus, from the Bible? Is this that Titus? And yeah, so
that
no,
kind of,
no, not that. Okay.
no. So it's a little later, but
All right. Good, good, good. Um, so tell us a little bit about awards because this book is an award winner. Tell us what awards it's won, what that process was like for you.
yeah, so the whole publishing process was several years of just trying to find an agent. And so because I went to that first writers conference and that editor gave me this list of things to do, she was like, just start entering it into these unpublished contests. And that conference that I went to is no longer going anymore, but they had one. And so the next year I went back and I entered it into that one. And so that one, the ACFW Minnesota Nice chapter had an award, so it won that award that year. And then I entered it into First Impressions, and it won that. And I entered it into Genesis, and it won that. Um, it was really confusing for me though, as an author, going, okay, this book has won every single thing I put it into. And every single time I query agents, they're like, nobody wants this story. Like this, nobody wants this era, nobody wants this story. Do something else. Like, no, there's no way. So I was like, wait a second, like, is this a good story or is this a horrible story? Like I had these
Yeah.
wild feedback, from these things.
Hmm.
So, um, yeah, at the end of the 2 years, I mean, it did win everything that I put it into. And then I had gone through every single agent in the whole Christian, everybody who represents Christian authors
Wow.
had rejected it. And so I was like, okay, God, I don't know what you're doing here and I don't know where to go from here. So I shelved it and I took the agent's advice and I wrote something else and jumped to early American and I wrote a whole thing because I thought that's recognizable, that's a recognizable era. Maybe people want this. Kind of started the same circuit with that story and it would win awards and then the agent would be like, no, nobody wants this. Like, what in the world? So that was another whole, almost a full year of doing that, kind of in tandem with, finishing out all the agents with Love and Treason. Um, and then, oh man, Christy Cambron became an agent. And I saw she'd like posted something on Instagram and it's like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll send it to her. And I just felt God very strongly say, no, send it to her, like right now, do it now. So I was like, okay. So I sent it to her, sent the query for Love and Treason, and she emailed back like a week later, I need more. Like, where's the whole thing? I want to see the whole thing. And she's the first agent who asked for it. So I was like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah.
So sent her the full and yeah, about a month later, she signed me, and then 2 months later we had a contract with Tyndale. So it was it was a lot of a weird like up and down
Yeah.
roller coaster like to get to that point. And then once that yes came, it was yeah, God just opened all the doors. So
Yeah. So, did your agent have trouble finding a publisher for it? Since the agents were all saying, I don't know about this era, what were the publishers saying?
she didn't. I mean, like Tyndale asked for it right away. So
Wow.
um I don't know. I think it was just a God timing. I think it
Yep.
was really the timing of everything and God orchestrating everything and just the work he did in my heart on that whole up and down journey and
Hmm.
the growth that I went through with him. It was ended up being, I look back on that time as like, yeah, that was confusing and hard at times, but just how he showed up in my life and in my heart was
Yeah.
so beautiful. Like I would not change it for anything. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, talk to us a little bit about that. What's something that you feel like you learned through that process that helped you grow?
I think a lot of it was just learning to listen to the Lord and
Hmm.
surrender my plans to Him.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, throughout the whole thing, at the very beginning of I want to be a missionary and, having to surrender that for something else. And yet looking back, now here I am writing these stories about what God did back then, like the
Hmm.
miracles He did, like I get to do the same thing, just in a different way than I thought I wanted, thought I was going to.
Yeah.
When I was a kid or a high schooler. So it's been really neat to see just how God's kind of bringing it full circle, but also just surrender, I feel like has been the biggest thing that I am still learning, but that He has just really worked on my heart in that time. So
I love that. And I feel like that was really a theme of this book too, was
mhm,
surrender and learning that we might have one plan and we might also pray for something that's really a
mhm,
good thing to pray for, but that doesn't always mean it's what God wants for us. And so being
mhm.
able to surrender and say, okay, I want what you want, God. And I trust that if this person isn't healed or saved or whatever, that there's a bigger purpose in that. And
Yeah, for sure.
that's hard to do. It's hard to
Mhm.
do.
It is, it is.
So we know truth is stranger than fiction, and this is a historical figure. You made a little comment about hair in the food being based on real life. Was that really inspired by something that happened,
No,
or?
I mean, who hasn't found a piece of hair
Right.
in their food, right?
Were there any other things though that were maybe inspired from something from your own personal modern day life that you found a way to put into the story?
I think every line the little kids say has been, things that my kids have said. Um, they don't want to eat and now they're hungry because they have to go to bed.
Yes.
All the things that are, just little things like that. The banter between Valentine and Cato, just the
Hmm.
guys. I come from a family of all girls, so I don't even
Okay.
know know how, yeah. But we are, we're all married now, my sisters and I, and all of our husbands are really good friends. And so it was just kind of fun to hear them, banter and talk back and forth with each other. And so some of those that playfulness kind of makes its way into some of the friendships. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
I love that. Um, so you mentioned your kids. How old are your kids now?
almost 13, 10, and 6.
And you homeschool them
Hmm.
and you write books.
Yep.
What is your schedule like? How do you fit all this in?
So we do classical conversations, and that's an all-day co-op day on one day a week. So then the other 4 days we're at home, and pretty much my mornings look like I get up usually before 5, between 4:30 and 5,
Oh,
and I start writing, have my quiet time, get the coffee going immediately. Um, and I write until the kids wake up. So they're usually up between 6 and 8, which is a gigantic span, but
yeah.
the youngest gets up because he's starving. So, um, but then we start, so I write until they're up, and then we do school for as long as that takes. And I might get a little bit of afternoon writing in, but usually the morning quiet is where the writing happens. So
So you get usually on a typical morning, what, hour, 2 hours?
probably a couple,
Okay.
2.5 hours probably.
Yeah. That's a lot of juggling. And being an author is not just the writing of the book, but then you have to market it and put things on social media and do a newsletter and all those things. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot more of that kind of thing than you imagine. In the beginning, you're
yeah.
like, I'm just gonna lock myself in my office and I'm gonna write books all day. And no, you have to post on social media, and
Yeah.
and it's fine. It's good. I love to post about other friends' books and all that kind of stuff. So it is fun, but it's just a little more, you've definitely stretched in other directions for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's one thing to write the book, but if you want anybody to know about it, you have to actually tell them about it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You
And
want them
that
to buy
we
it.
don't like that. We don't want to do that.
Right. We just want to close the door, and most writers are introverts and just want to stay in their little office and do their thing.
Mhm. We want everybody to know about our books. We just don't want to have to tell them, right?
Yeah, don't be the one to tell them. Yeah, exactly. So, you've talked a little bit about this, but how does your faith influence your writing?
I mean, I think it has to be part of it. It's, I write these stories because I'm interested in these dark moments in history where there's maybe persecution or, just these really heavy things, but there's always these people who kind of rebelliously stand up against it, and they're the light in the darkness. And I love those stories because they're inspiring to me and show me that, okay, if someone can do that then, I can do that now. And if the God who brought them through back then, through those hard things, can bring me through what I'm going through today. So I think I love those stories because I'm looking for that inspiration, that encouragement for myself. And I don't know. Like, I don't think I could write without my faith. Like, trying to imagine
Yeah,
writing a story without it, like I couldn't do it. Like,
yeah.
yeah, God's the one who sustains all through the writing process, because that's a whole up and down thing too. I'm sure
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
So,
So you seem to have a theme for rebellious women who stand up for things. Would you consider yourself a rebellious woman who stands up for things?
no, no, I'm the quiet rule follower. So,
I'm
so
right
I
there
think
with you.
looking, just reading these stories of people who are strong in their faith, and I think that's where the rebellion comes in is,
Hmm.
you have this, pressure from the world or, from the other angle coming at you. It is a sort of rebellion to stand up and say, no, this is what God says, this is what the Bible says, and I'm going to stand on this. So that's where the rebellious, the good rebels part comes into my stories. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily rebellion for rebellion's sake,
Right.
but
Well,
um,
and I love that theme in this book that we see the characters once they know, they can't unknow and they can't deny it.
mhm,
And I know I've felt that in my own life. Like it might be easier to just say, okay, I'll just keep quiet about it, or I'll just say what you want me to say to make you happy. Um,
mhm.
but but when you know so deeply in your heart, you can't. So it's maybe a form of rebellion that's maybe not as life-threatening as it was in early
Yeah, for
Rome,
sure.
but I think we all have those moments where we have to stand up for our faith because you just know it to be true and you can't deny it when you have that kind of a testimony in your heart.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Um, so faith in the story. Let's talk a little bit about the faith arc that you conceived here. You knew a little bit about Valentine and about the jailer's daughter who was blind. What did you know? What didn't you know? What did you have to kind of manufacture?
So yeah, I was looking into, I mean, the legends we have are very, very brief, very vague, and sometimes kind of contradictory. Some of them say Valentine is a physician, and some of them because he healed the
Mhm.
daughters. Then it's like, okay, that takes out the miracle side of it. So
Right.
was he a physician, and it was medical stuff that he did? Or, others say, okay, he married couples in secret. Well, in order to do that in Rome, you had to have, be kind of a notarius and basically a contract lawyer, and you would write up the marriage documents.
Hmm.
So he kind of has to be able to do that if he's going to, fulfill
Yeah.
this legend of marrying couples in secret. And then others say he was a church leader. So, we have all these kind of different stories about Valentine himself. And so I was looking into, okay, and we don't actually know if he was a real person. We don't have any original sources that document his life until hundreds of years later, or when these stories pop up. So I kind of went into this looking at, okay, let's just pretend this is real. He was a real guy. These are the stories we have. How do I make this work in what we know about Rome at the time and the culture and everything? So um, I ended up making him the public notarius um, and also a church leader. So he's got these two jobs. And according to the legends, he was put in jail at one point, and that's where he meets the jailer's daughter, and she's blind. And he shares the gospel, he prays with her and prays for her, and she's healed. That's one of the stories. And so um, so I kind of went the miracle route versus the him being a physician route because I was thinking with the faith arc, how does how does it look for a pagan Roman who is, blind? What does that look like in the culture? What is her life like? And then how is she, seeking? And is just another physician in her life going to make her turn to God? Or if it, is it going to take a miracle for that to happen? So
Yeah.
that's kind of the route of the stories that I went based on the scant stories we
Yeah.
had to work with. Um, so yeah, that's part of the legend surrounding him. And then yeah, and then him writing a letter to her at the end signed Your Valentine was as part of those stories as well. So
Wow.
that letter was the first thing I wrote in the whole book. That was the first thing that popped
Ah.
into my head. I was wondering what would he have written in this letter.
Uh-huh. I also was really fascinated by these wax tablets that they would use to write back and forth. And I assume
Mhm.
that's, historical stuff that
Yeah.
you dug up and learned about. But it just, I don't know. I've never lived in ancient Rome, so it didn't occur to me, you know?
Yeah, instead of, pencil and paper, it's erasable. They just had these wooden tablets covered in beeswax, and they would just scratch into the beeswax and pass it off, and then you could scrape it clean again and reuse it. So
Wow.
that was a new to me thing that I learned, and I was like, oh, that's actually pretty brilliant, if you don't,
Yeah.
it's expensive and yeah.
Yeah, and what a great way. I just love how you wove these little details like that throughout the story. So it felt so real, felt like perhaps I could have been there at that time. But yet, thankfully, I'm here in my heated and air-conditioned home
Yeah.
and with all the modern amenities. But yeah, that was really good. Well, I want to take a moment now and open it up. If anybody here has a specific question for Jamie, you can either unmute yourself or you can type it in the chat and I will read it. But I want to give you a chance to give your comments and questions to her. And if not, that's okay too. Well, if something comes up, you're still welcome to unmute and ask any questions that
I'll
you
ask
have.
a quick question.
Yes.
So Valen's aunt, was that true? Did you
See,
think?
I made her up.
Okay,
I did not expect her to be in the story.
she was a big
Um,
part.
she, I love her.
Yes, yes, she was so cool. So I didn't know if him his mom dying, like, is that all made up too? Like, had you found anything about his history? I don't.
Yeah, I didn't find anything about his history, where he came from, what his family was like. So,
Okay.
his whole backstory was fictional. Um, and then yeah, his aunt just when I write, I see the story in my head playing out like a movie, and I'm just typing it out as I see it. And
Mm,
so I was writing this part where he was going home, and all of a sudden she is there making perfume on the balcony. I was like,
yeah,
well, this is different. I didn't see this coming. But
yeah, that was neat. And neat how her connection to Iris and that little bond that they had. That was really cool.
yeah,
How'd you come up with her name when you were talking about?
um, I think I was just looking through, Greek and Roman, Latin names, and I found that one, and I was like, oh yeah, this fits her.
That's her.
Mhm.
I also found it fascinating I'm not going to say the word right, but the hole that they had to go into with Hades was in
Yeah.
there. That whole,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, like squirming thinking about that. And it was so visual. You do such a good job. Like, I really do have the movie playing in my head. Um, and I could completely see that. And then when they pulled him out and hung him, and then he started singing, I was like, oh my gosh, that was so great. So you're amazing, amazing.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
glad you liked the prison part.
Well, I mean, that was fascinating. Um, you know, and
We're
was
having
that
to go
true?
there
Like, is that
ourselves.
how I think it said in there too? And I was like, I gotta look that up. Um, how one of the apostles died in that type of, it sounded like almost like a tube in the ground. Is that like what it
Yeah, it's
was?
kind of like a domed room with like another room above it. And so they had the hole that they would drop them down into. It's still there in Rome. You can go visit it and see it.
Wow.
Um, we went to Rome, and I got to see everything, except for that church, the church that they built on top of the prison. Like, the roof had collapsed the week before we got there, so they
Oh,
had it all blocked off. And I was like, that was the one thing I wanted to see. But
wait, do you know what church that is? Just curious.
um, it's
My
Mamertine's
son is
prison.
going to Rome next month, so that would be neat to see.
Oh.
It's the Mamertine prison is what it's called now. And
Okay.
then there's a church above it. I don't remember the name of it, but if you search Mamertine prison, you should be able to find it. Or
Okay.
Tulian.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your trip to Rome. At what point in the writing process did you make that trip?
I had written the first draft, which was very long. It's like 3 books long because I had no idea that there was like a word count you were supposed to
Yeah,
stay in. So it was basically a trilogy.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I had written that, and then my husband and I went in 2018, and um, yeah, I dragged him all over the place, through all of the markets of Trajan, the forum. I was taking pictures of the ground for like 7 hours, and just all the little details, just the colors of the stone and all the things, anything I could think of to add life and detail to those scenes.
yeah.
It was amazing to see. It really came alive for sure.
Yeah, and I really felt like, I was walking the streets of Rome and, you were giving such good directions of which way they went. And so that the places were really based on where these places really would have been
Mhm.
then. Wow.
Yeah, I had this whole for a long time. I had this map of Rome in our kitchen because that's where I was doing my writing, and I had written it like to scale, like this massive 3 by 4 map of all of the streets and where they were connected at this point in history, because everything builds on each other
Yeah.
throughout time. So, but it's like down at the third century level, these are the buildings and where they would have been and what they would have been used for at the time. So looking at all the archaeological records and maps, and I love maps, so that was super fun for me. But yeah.
I
Fascinating.
also
Yeah.
like that line, sorry.
Go
That
ahead.
I loved the line when he smelled like roses and she's like, "You smell like roses." And he's like, "Would you rather have me smell like body odor?" That
So
was just so
romantic.
funny. Yeah. Thinking about that. I wondered, like talked about the perfumeries and all that that was a funny line.
Yeah, I'm super good at writing smooth romantic scenes like that.
I was going to ask you, and then it just left my head for a minute. Well, it'll come back. Um, Talk to us a little bit about any challenges you faced while you were writing this book.
um I think, yeah, I mean, going through the publishing process while I'm, editing and working on it and wondering if this was ever going to go anywhere or if this was really just a story for me and God to write. And,
Yeah.
is this just for me? Is this just to change my heart? So that was a big part of it. Cutting it down from a gigantic trilogy book to what it is, what it is now. Was a process of what do I keep? And that was a whole learning thing too of, okay, you have to keep things that are going to move the story forward or that are going to show a facet of someone's character. And that was, I mean, that was a challenge, but it was also good because I was learning how to write a story, how to tell a story, what scenes were the things to keep or throw. So um yeah, I think there were a lot of different challenges in just in different ways, I think,
Yeah.
through that.
I remembered what I was going to ask you. So we've portrayed Valentine that at the end he was executed. Is this part of the true legend as well?
So I the like very ceremonial executions were part of what they would do in Rome. Death was a spectacle and it was a warning to everybody else. And so they did these very ceremonial things, bringing in people executioners dressed up as the gods, to show that this person has angered our beliefs, our way of
Uh,
life, our gods. The gods are taking vengeance on this person. So everybody, take warning because this could be
yeah.
you. So that's very much how the Roman gladiator games, like all those kinds of things were very ceremonial and very very much created as this this warning really to everybody watching, like, follow the rules and we will have peace. But if you don't, you'll find yourself in this arena. And it was we don't know exactly if everything that I put into this, so these scenes were actually accurate to what happened. The legends say he was beaten with clubs and beheaded. And so
Okay.
other than that, we don't know. But
Yeah. Yeah, and I know in some of the things you've written about this book that you struggled a little bit with having to make such a tragic ending. Tell us about what your thought process was and why you ultimately decided to end the book that way rather than a happily ever after.
yeah, I mean, one thing I stuck so closely to history and the historical record up until that point. Um, there are other records of two other Valentines killed on the same day in different parts of the Roman Empire. So there are actually three Saint Valentines killed on February 14th. So looking into like, okay, why February 14th? Which is actually would have been a festival of, fertility, and, they would have had games and things. So executions would have happened. So that would have been very cultural around the empire. So to have three church leaders killed on the same day is not odd. But in my head, I was kind of spinning with like, okay, what if they were looking for a guy named Valentine all over the place and they caught some, but they didn't catch the real one. And so I can make him make him escape and it could be happy. But I think because the story of this specific one ends the way it does, I couldn't change it. And I think if I had created that happily ever after on Earth the way we like it to be, I think the story would have really lost its power because the whole message of this whole story going through it is really a story of surrender and trusting God when he answers some of our prayers and then he doesn't answer others. And do we really only get a happy ending if everything we want to happen happens? If we
Yeah.
get everything we asked for, like that's when I can trust God. Or can we trust him when he tells us no? Is he still
Mhm.
worthy of our worship when he tells us no? Like
Yeah.
the answer, it has to be yes. I mean, his word tells us it's yes. So how does that look, and how does that challenge us and change us? And I was, working through all these things as I was writing it too. Um, but yeah, I think the story, it had to end the way it did. So
Yeah. Yeah. It was a hard ending, but it felt honest and truthful. So,
I mean, I cried. So if that's any
oh,
a lot, I cried a lot.
I
Um,
bet. I
but
bet.
yeah,
Well, tell us a little bit about your other books. Since I've started reading As Sure as the Sea, I can see some characters are being pulled through. Are we going to see some of the same characters in all three of the books you have out, or?
so As Sure as the Sea tells the story of Saint Nicholas, the real story of the real Saint Nicholas, um, set. I'm really bad at math, but I think it's like 40 years after
Okay.
um, of Love and Treason. So
Hmm.
I do have some of the characters who were in Of Love and Treason kind of end up in the eastern side of the Roman Empire and kind of pop up in the background of As Sure as the Sea. And so that story is about a female diver who teams up with the local pastor who's new and who has sunk his fortune at the bottom of the sea. So they have to team up to rescue that and help the people of their congregation who are under intense persecution. So that's kind of a retelling of the story of Saint Nicholas. And then my other book, it's right here,
Hmm.
Daughter of the Rebellion. That one comes out in May. That one is like 100 years after this
Okay.
Shows the Sea.
Hmm.
So I don't have any characters popping up, although you will see some little like Easter egg hints at um, throwbacks to some of the stories and the stories that are now being told
Yeah.
100 years later about these people. So
Yeah.
um, there's a little hint, but she is actually a captured warrior who is sold to a gladiator school in Rome. So we kind of get to see the inside of what it would have been like to be a fighter in Rome. And then it's actually the story of Saint Telemachus and how he ends gladiator combat in Rome forever. So it was a really fun story to write. I had a lot of fun with that one. So
Yeah. And when does that come out?
that comes out May 12th.
Okay. And are you working on the next book?
I'm working on the next one.
Can
So
you give us any teasers about that?
this one is set in Roman Gaul, so it's northern France, and it's at the very tail end of the Roman Empire before it's kind of collapsed. And so actually the end of this book is the final collapse of the Western Roman Empire. So
Mm,
we've got some people trying to rescue books and copies of scripture before they're burned, and we kind of usher in the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages, they're sometimes called. But
okay. And is that one based on a real saint as well as like these other three?
so this is like shortly after St. Patrick dies.
Okay.
So I'm taking some Irish thieves have been banished to the Roman Empire and told they can come home, but only if they find these sets of books and bring them back to Ireland. So it's not based on a real person, although we do know that the Irish monasteries, at the fall of the Roman Empire, the Irish monasteries were the ones who they saved all of the Latin literature we have to this day, pretty much is because they've rescued it and saved it and copied it and then went back. And they were the missionary beacons to the world after this. And so they sent missionaries all across the world with books and scripture. And so it's not based on one specific person. It's based on, well, we know they did this. So how did they do it and who did it?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah.
So you've kind of created a niche in early Rome, but
Mhm.
you said you always envisioned yourself as a little more recent historic fiction. Do you think you'll stay in Rome, or do you have ideas and plans to write in a more modern era?
We'll see. Right now, I know my publisher wants me to stay in the Roman Empire era, which is fine because there's what I really want to do is to tell stories from church history and to show how, God is working through all of time. It didn't end with biblical fiction and suddenly
Yeah.
start up somewhere later. It's running all through history. So I think all of my stories are going to have some element of church history and just how God is working through people and throughout time. So right now it's Roman Empire, and I don't know, we'll see.
Is there anyone else that is writing Roman Empire historic fiction?
Um, Brian Litfin wrote some about Emperor Constantine.
Okay.
I think those are more like the war angle.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I mean, there's a lot of biblical era stuff, but
Yeah.
like this later period, post Bible times
Hmm.
to the Middle Ages, I'm sure there's got to be some, but
Yeah. Yeah. I see a lot more of Old Testament, New Testament, biblical fiction, but I've not seen any quite like yours. So it's great to be specialized in that niche without a lot of competition. So I love that. Well, we're getting
I
close to the end. Yes, Kirsten, do you have
just
another?
had a quick question since you were at just Jamie, who do you like to read? Who do you have that as soon as they come out with a book, you're buying
it's a lot of people. Um,
it?
I love Amanda Dykes, Amanda Cox, um, really into rom-coms. So like Angela Ruth Strong, Becca Kinzer, those are a couple of my favorites there. Pepper Basham. I gotta look at my bookshelves now. Heather Kaufman writes biblical fiction. She's amazing. Um, there's all of the people, all of the books.
All the people. That's great.
I,
Do you
I
have
read
any
widely in all these different genres, so I'm kind of a mood reader. I just kind of
yeah,
go,
me too. Do you
yeah.
have any writing buddies
I
that
do.
you inspire each other, or you help each other, or do you ever meet up and do a writing marathon?
We do. A lot of it takes place over Zoom. So I'll Zoom in the morning sometimes with other writers around the country. I'm part of a group called Christian Mommy Writers, and so we have mommy writers all over the world. And so we have this open Zoom room that we just kind of pop in whenever we get a minute, and there may be somebody else writing at the same time, so we can kind of like, all right, we're working together. But as far as brainstorming, I have a critique partner, Christine Delano. She actually just released her debut novel, which is Wall Street Suspense. It's amazing. I forgot to mention her, but yes, her. Um, yeah, she's wonderful to bounce ideas off. We both write very different things. You know, she's writing contemporary mystery, suspense, thriller stuff, and I'm writing obviously ancient romance. But she just has such a unique perspective on story, and she fills my story holes, and I can, find ones in hers. So we kind of iron sharpen iron each other in that way. So it's pretty nice to have that.
I just recently heard about that Charlotte Delano book. Is the main character Meredith?
Meredith.
Okay, that's my daughter's name. Yes. So I've heard about it. I've heard her on some podcasts, and it's
Yeah,
on
it's
my
so
list
good.
of things to read. Very good.
Yes, so
Um,
good.
does anybody else have any final questions they want to squeeze in before I close us out?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I wondered if the story could have gone on, would Iris and Titus have married, do you think?
I don't know. I kind of left that open-ended. I was kind of asking some friends as they were, writer friends as we were going, like, would you be mad if if they ended up together? And some were like, yes, I would be very mad. They should never. And then someone else was like, no, I love Titus. You should totally make them end up together. So I was like, maybe I'll just write it in such a way where the reader can decide if they want them to end up together. Um,
Yeah, because I
but
was just thinking it was such a hard time for women. She really needed to marry, or you
yeah,
property or anything. And at some point, her father would die and she'd be alone. So
alone.
I thought Titus was protective. So I thought maybe they would, unless she met somebody else. I don't know.
I
Another
mean, maybe,
story.
maybe you should read As Sure as the Sea.
Yes, maybe you should keep reading
Oh,
the
They might
next
they
book.
might pop up in As Sure as the Sea, and you can find out what I imagine happened.
I'll have to write that. As sure as the sea.
As
As
sure as
sure
the
as the sea. Yeah, that's the next book. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, and I feel like I would be okay with Titus and Iris getting together because if there was that transformation, just like
Mhm.
Iris and her father made such a transformation to learning their faith and, just completely changed from this place of worshiping all the gods to try and cover all their bases to
Mhm.
worshiping the one God. I think if we saw a similar spiritual arc in Titus, which I felt like we were getting a hint that he was starting to catch on that there's something to this. These people are
Yeah.
different when they have this faith that I could see him having a transformation and then being equally yoked with Iris being ready for her. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Titus was one of my, I mean, for started writing the first draft without him, and then him being a background character, and then to have him have this whole point of view, he
Yeah.
really just he became my favorite, and I was rooting for him to come around the whole time.
Well, Jamie, we loved the book. We loved your writing and appreciate you being here. Can you tell us the best way for us to connect with you?
You can check out my website. It's jamieogle.com. I have all the links to my social media, my newsletter. That's kind of the hub of where you can find all the ways to connect with me. And I'm pretty active, mostly active on Instagram, but yeah, all the ways there.
Excellent. And then we'll be watching for Daughter of the Rebellion in May, correct? Okay,
Yep.
all right. Well, thank you again for being here. We so appreciate you and this beautiful story that you've written.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.